another edition of Digital Transformation Survivors. This is the podcast that talks to industry leaders about their challenges, learning how to manage complex web estates. I'm your host, Julian Tedstone. I'm the strategy director now. I've just changed role from managing director, now the strategy director for Coherence, where we specialize in figuring things like this out. Today, I'm really excited because we have Ms. Antonella Severo, who's the product manager for WebCMS at Nestlé Global Services Spain. So Antonella is a true digital transformation survivor who leads web platforms and product management initiatives for one of the world's just largest web estates, covering food and beverage companies across many different categories, across many different territories, and responsible for managing Nestlé's global web estate that includes over, let's get this statistic right, 1,300 brand sites across multiple markets and languages. Absolutely incredible, all from a series of core underlying platforms, which we'll be finding out more about. She's also a certified Scrum Master, long-time Drupal community contributor, and served as the track chair for the clients and industry track at DrupalCon Europe. So I'm really, really excited. What a speaker we have for you today. And really excited to introduce you. Antonella, how are you doing today?
Hi, great. So excited to be here. Thanks for having me. Joined the call.
That's absolutely wonderful. So please tell us a little bit about yourself. So what does a product manager for WebCMS at Nestlé do?
Sure. I mean, I'm part of the IT group, and as the IT group, we have a whole bunch of products, not from marketing and sales tech, which is my area, to supply chain, to human resources, whatever technology needs for whatever area. As a product manager, I'm focused on the web platform tools, which include CMS, hosting, and other things that will make our operations faster and better.
So, and the scale of this is just absolutely huge. So you're focusing on WebCMS, so that's really where the business meets the customer online. But this is 1,300 brand sites. So talk us through that. What does that look like? How is it organized? Why so many? And what's the strategy behind having so many sites? Why is it important for them to have it structured in this way?
Actually, it was 2,000 sites, but so about 8 years ago, when everything was really more isolated, the markets were working independently. And as part of the digital transformation journey that the organization was going through and IT, what we did is we started to consolidate tools around our areas. So instead of each market having their own tools and processes, which means a lot of extra costs and different trainings, different partners. It's really rather a dispersed panorama. The idea that we went by is like to simplify, standardize, and share. And that's kind of been our journey. So at the beginning, one of the things that was important in my space is to choose a unified CMS solution. And in that case, that's where we chose Drupal, which was an open source enterprise platform, really at the top of the game, secure, and that was very important for us. So we have our CMS. Then we added several hosting solutions. Rather than having hundreds of different vendors, we chose 3 that we could work with, and also another kind of theme is journey to the cloud. So wherever we could get solutions in the cloud, that would help the operations as well. So doing that journey, getting these tools in place, you also need processes. So the team had to work on that. Now, how did we scale it out? How did we start introducing this? We used the multi-site approach, which allowed us to scale faster and also help the brands unify. So we would begin with a brand, say, like Maggie or whatever, and they could create one code base, create their template, which is the look and feel, and then implement and deploy a lot of sites. So that was the model, where we're providing the Drupal and stuff like that. Then it it evolved a lot, which I'm sure we'll talk about more. But that was kind of the base thing we started off with. Oh, and actually, one of the things that we do all the time is look at the quality of the sites. Are there sites these single sites, we try to consolidate them into these multi-sites. We try to decommission ones that really aren't adding value. And that's why we were able to reduce to 1,300, which is still a lot, but it's definitely a better model, more unified, and things like that.
So this is a scenario where you get like a single brand and it's operating in multiple markets, and then you roll that up and you've got many brands in a category like food and beverages,
exactly,
or water or whatever the category is, and then suddenly you've got this multiplication effect where you've got one website in each market. I think for the listeners, thinking about the logistics of managing so many 2,000 websites, you said, covering all of those different market executions. What did that landscape look like before the program came into play? Because obviously, did each brand have its own implementation, its own content strategy, its own route to market, I guess, and a plethora of different hosting platforms and technologies. So how did that affect the operation of the business?
It obviously goes slower because you have brand teams that have to get into make technological decisions, and spending all their time doing that work when you can have it done once by one team and then deploy that. So we're setting up the foundation so that they could focus more on the brand and marketing side of things. And the landscape keeps changing so much, and we're constantly having to add new tools, new solutions. So they really have to stay focused on that. And so if we can eliminate most of the technology decisions, that brings a lot more value to the company.
And I guess was your aim to consolidate the technology and the hosting, and I guess the things like the security governance and the accessibility governance, and then were there other things that you wanted to keep in the control of the brand, and how did you make that balance? What things belong to the central platform, and what things do you want to enable the brand to have freedom to do?
You touched upon an important thing, like you brought up security. So it's not only the processes that we were going through, and we're creating the operational processes, but then there's security requirements that we have to constantly be adding. So you can imagine if these security changes have to keep happening every month, all of these different teams across the world have to figure out how to add these. So you have security, then you have global marketing. They have a certain strategy. So they can feed us the requirements instead of having to go to each market and make sure it gets done. Then there's integrations, right? We have a whole bunch of other sister technologies, say CRMs or recipe hubs, product data hubs, content data hubs, e-retailing, customer support service. So and analytics. So we worked with each of these teams over time to standardize as much as possible the configurations. The doing integrations like with our smart recipe hub and stuff like that is very costly. So can you imagine if every market had to do it, or even every master if they had to do it, And another thing that I saw in terms of the governance, like once you start with a small governance, it went from brand. All of a sudden you started to see more consolidation. I think as a company strategy, you started to see categories being formed. So Maggie's part of food. So now we're starting to have these multi-site approach on the category level. You start to have some on the zone level. Yeah. You start to have some, we had some regional because regions have a lot of local brands, and it's hard to have a website for each of these small local brands. So we created these regional platforms. So
So it started as a brand specific initiative, but it's almost kind of moved up the, what's the right analogy, up the food chain, is that right? That's not quite right. It's
exactly,
kind of moved
absolutely.
up, and then it's kind
Yeah,
of moved
yeah,
out to the category level, and then across regionally as well. So it spread quite organically in a way then, across the
exactly.
business. Okay, that's really interesting. And the things, so once that consolidation exercise has been completed, what what things remain in the control of the brand, and how does that help them to achieve what the brands need to achieve?
Sure. Yeah, anything like this, what we try to do is we try to give them what we call freedom in a box. So we give them the
Okay.
box, we give them the
Yeah.
starter kit, and then they're responsible for localization of the content, the images. Now, will they have needs for extra functionality and code? Yes. And we want them to innovate. This is exactly what we want them to do. So how does that work then? So when we have a multi-site approach, we don't have a lot of different agencies handling the code on a local level. We have one global agency. And this is part of also the consolidation where we have a global panel of suppliers who understands our business, understands our requirements. We keep onboarding them with the new ways of working. So they will have to go, there's a governance within each of these multi-site approaches, whether it's brand or region or category. And so they have to submit their requests to the global team. The global team will build it, and then it will, funnel back down to the local site. Now, Drupal is very modular, so you don't have to enable all the features that are available in that particular, or that's available from the foundation. You just enable the ones that you need.
Is that's part of the that's part of the core balance, isn't it? So you've kind of centralized all the things that you want to have control over from that governance perspective, and also from the technology investment perspective, you kind of centralize that to an extent as well. So you're building once and you're releasing to many different endpoints. But at the
Exactly.
same time, I guess like brand execution, content strategy, the kind of I guess the user offer is still very much governed at the brand level,
Yes.
at the
Yes.
market level as well. Do you see a lot of that? Do you see a lot of kind of innovation happening at the market level?
Yeah. Yes. Definitely at the market level. So they can consolidate also within their market for sure. Some markets are smaller, don't have as much in terms of budget, so they really need to work together. Um, and another thing that we did to really what we began to see when we first rolled out this multi-site approach, which was great, but then what happened? Here we are trying to uh, reutilize. So what happened? So each of these masters, what we call them, or multi-sites, started to work on their own and were kind of working isolated. So yes, there was a consistency within the brand, but then across the verticals, there was no reutilization. So that's the work that we started to do to really be in touch with all of these different global teams. And what we rolled out is we used the Drupal distribution model. And we created our own in-house Drupal distribution, which we call Lightness. If I say Lightness, that's what I'm talking about. And that over time is really helping to harness the reutilization. It took time because we have to educate the global teams, so that they understood how it worked. Once we rolled out, we tried to connect with all of these. Some of the multi-sites were already beyond it, so it took years when they had to re-platform to get back into the Lightness. But we're succeeding in that. Um, Another thing is we're be concerned with is like when we release Lightness, it's not like okay, you install Lightness and it's done. No, you have to keep up every time we release the the multi-sites or the single sites also have to re-release and get the latest security requirements, the latest marketing functionality that's there. So it's been quite a challenge, but I think it's really working.
So that puts Nestlé as perhaps one of the biggest software engineering organizations around in a way, because you're creating your own distribution of a very popular and well-known open source CMS platform, and then you're both consolidating the various implementations of that across your own business, and also at the same time innovating into a core and then flowing that out into the different brands and the different markets. So you're kind of going up and you're going down at the same time through that innovation stack.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Because what we try to do is sometimes some of these teams, business teams, are already creating their own functionality because they have their own development agencies. So we try, or two of them are going towards the same direction. So what we try to stay communicated so that they could develop it and we take it in, we make sure that it's white label, and we take it into our distribution, and then we start to maintain it. So that has worked really well. If they find bugs, they will let us know. We're working in a DevOps system, so it's easy to do pull requests, push requests, and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah. So you're basically you're kind of taking ownership of things that are being innovated within a specific context, and then you're kind of migrating that into the core as such, into Lightness.
Exactly.
And then
Exactly.
making that kind of like fully configurable for a wider distribution. Does that take quite a lot of transformation, and how do you manage that process?
Well, in my own team, we have a product owner, we have a tech lead. They they meet with our global agency that develops it. So that's like, the standard Scrum, Agile methodology, where we define the backlog. We take the inputs from security, global marketing, the business, our own research, our own experiences in the industry. I participate a lot in Drupal, which is a great source of information for me. A lot of times it actually confirms and validates what we're doing because
Yes.
I see the same concerns are happening in the community, in the sessions that
Yeah.
come in. So we take all those inputs, we prioritize the backlog. That's obviously a challenge. What do you do first?
Yeah.
So we've learned to kind of break the roadmap into categories. So there's the security level, which is a must do. Security issues, Drupal upgrades, Drupal updates, PHP updates, that's a must. Then we have an operational level and an innovation level. And then we just start to fit all these things. And of course, there's only limited budget, limited time. So we look at what's the overall company strategy and then try to trickle it down and match our priorities against those objectives.
And so it feels like like yeah, a very large program with lots of moving parts, multiple tracks going along at the same time. How do you plan? And with what kind of precision do you plan?
Oof.
Are you able to land things within a precise landing zone, or are there too many variables in that kind of ecosystem?
There's so many variables, even with the best intent. That's why I think a change management plan is really important, so that you have an understanding of what impacts your product has on other teams, so that when you need to make a change, you create the change management plan, or what I say, project management. So one of the first things that we do is we make sure to align with each of these teams, like the integrations and everything, and then on a yearly basis, try to understand what they need to do, what their strategy is, what we have to do in response, and we try to align on the roadmap. That's the best case scenario.
Yes.
And if we see, like, it doesn't always happen, so sometimes, like, we have to change vendor because of something happened, the contract, this, that, and we have to mobilize. So we have to kind of escalate that priority. Not always the most ideal, but these things happen. Sometimes what happens is we're using the framework throughout that other teams are responsible for, and a change happens that we don't know about. So, we have to kind of be on top of that. When we do, even though we're product management, I think it's important to understand how project management fits into that. So, for example, if we're rolling out something, we're rolling out SSO for backend editors right now.
Yeah.
That's a must-have for security. But it's not an easy thing where you can roll it out with Lightness. This is an operational process, and
Yes.
we need a lot of tasks to happen on
Yes.
each of the
In
site
in a
levels.
certain order. Yeah.
Exactly. So what we try to do is come up with a guide. Well, first we have to understand it. Then we come up with a guide, video, webinars, communications, um, and then we try to guide the different teams. We track so we understand which ones are doing it, getting it done, because at the end of the year it has to be done. So we need to, kind of push some teams more than others. So it's very important that that communication is done, because sometimes there's a cost involved. Their agency has to do extra work, and the more ahead of time you can let the business know that, the better they can also plan for it,
Yes.
I would
Yeah.
say.
So so that feels like it's there's a big initiative to engage with the stakeholders, both I guess your kind of group stakeholders that own different functions like security and GDPR and all the different types of PII governance and so on, and then obviously the brand stakeholders, commercial stakeholders.
Mm-hmm.
So you're a little bit like the United Nations, I suppose, kind of getting it, talking to all of these different stakeholders and bringing everybody together to help coordinate. Which, I mean, as how have you, or I guess what is your approach for doing that? It feels like it's very kind of guiding and communicative, but do you also have to switch to being more directive and setting more hard deadlines for the entire business to move on? So, for example, like certain Drupal upgrades won't wait, will they? They have to happen. So, how do you force certain things through when they have to be done?
I mean, we can't really force. All we could do is communicate and assist as much as possible. Um, get in on a call, seeing what's up, how can we help, or seeing what are the blockers. Um, I think in a way, part of the digital transformation journey is that we're kind of all speaking the same language. So it's just a matter of sometimes the priorities. Uh, I think when security issues are involved, people are more likely to respond
Yeah,
because it's something that really can
so
affect
critical.
their
Yes.
site. Yeah,
Yeah.
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 Um, and so it's just a matter of setting up the right governance structures. So there's meetings that like I will have with stakeholders. Marketing has similar meetings, but they're talking more like on the functional level. I might be talking more on the technical level. Um, they're meeting with security also. And we have a whole series of meetings with our integrations, ongoing, like weekly, monthly, depends on how frequent the changes are. And we also have, lately, we've really been working on regional teams. So we have local IT in each market, and we have uh, regional teams in the zone level. So we can, especially for the single sites that don't have this global entity, and there's still about 300 single sites, we can, kind of communicate out to our regional teams, and they could contact the local ITs in their market. So this has really accelerated the communication.
So you've talked about when we were preparing for this session, we talked about the evolution from WebCMS to WebOps, and I thought that was a really fascinating insight into how you see the running of this kind of ecosystem. So talk me through, what does WebOps mean to you, and what has that evolution looked like?
Sure. I think, well, WebOps is more how are we operating? Who are the stakeholders? I mean, similar to DevOps, it's like development and operations. So WebOps is, I think it's more of a global tool that kind of takes into account a lot of these different processes, hosting, DevOps, our operational teams, because running a website, there's a lot of processes, a lot of tasks you have to do. So the more that we can automate those tasks, uh, the the more accurate you could be. You're taking a lot of manual effort off of all our stakeholders. Like I said, like local IT, they're the first ones that the teams go to get
Yes.
a lot of the information or tasks done. So if we can automate those operations, it takes a load off of them, because local IT doesn't only kind of respond to WebCMS. They have WebCMS, CRM, like everything. So um, since we have so many levels of stakeholders, the more that we can have a system that everybody understands, could hook into easily, doesn't have to figure out, where do I find this, where do I find that, how do I access this,
And that's, I guess, part of the investment that you've made. Obviously there's been a massive technology investment, and there's been an investment in terms of the development of that, the configuration, the integration of that. But actually, it's much more holistic than that. You've kind of built it's almost like a global center of excellence.
Exactly.
That's both kind of, it's centralized in the expertise of your team and the work that you do, but you've also devolved a lot of that to the brand level and to the regional level. So you've got everybody working in this kind of distributed manner, which is absolutely amazing.
Exactly. Like right now with DevOps, one of the security requirements is to have our code in our own repository. So we're doing a massive mini project to migrate the code into that repository, and getting the brands to understand what all of this means. They probably haven't heard of this stuff.
Yeah. What does it mean, and more importantly, why are we doing it? And that's a
Exactly.
big one to have to walk through. So you mentioned Drupal and the Drupal community and the open source community. That's obviously, you're speaking in DrupalCon. There's DrupalCon Vienna coming up, isn't there? And I know that you're.
I'll be speaking at Drupal Camp next week in Santiago.
Drupal Camp, that's right.
Drupal Camp Spain, yeah.
Yes, yeah. Drupal Camp Spain.
And then, and then attend in DrupalCon Vienna.
So a massive part of the Drupal community. What does the Drupal community mean to you, and why is it so important for Nestlé?
I mean, all of our web assets are based on Drupal, and it really has given us the flexibility to do so much with it. As a CMS, as an enabler to our web platform. I mean, there's a huge community around it. So you have developers, you have innovation. We don't have vendor lock-in, because we have so much real estate. We have to be able to have that control of our assets, basically.
So that's interesting. So it puts you in control. And
yes.
I guess with an organization where you've got 1,300 sites to manage, you want to spread risk, distribute risk, don't you, as far as you can, and not have things centralized. So, and I guess that's one of the arguments of open source versus proprietary. With proprietary technology, I guess you've got less influence over how that's developed, and I guess there's more risk centralized. Yeah, that's a really
right.
Yeah.
Because then we're contingent on their roadmap. I mean, obviously we're contingent to some extent on Drupal's roadmap, but the beauty of Drupal is that we can also work on it and contribute it back, which we have done. Yeah. And another thing about Drupal, which is becoming really important these days, is that it is composable, that it's a composable architecture. So where we were really focused on a CMS, now we're really looking at platforms. We're looking at decoupled. Our businesses are asking for this because they have different needs. They need to, so we're using Drupal as a content repository in the back end. We're using it as the front end presentation for an e-commerce backend, or vice versa, or the content repository to JavaScripts or kiosks or mobile. I mean, the possibilities are endless, and Drupal is a really good fit for that modularity.
It's kind of helped to deliver the aims that you've had so far on this journey that you've been on. It's been flexible enough to handle this kind of this consolidation and then this distribution method that you've got. Where do you see Drupal going in the future? And I guess what are your hopes and your wishes for it as a technology?
That's a big question. Well, I know that Drupal is really working hard on the AI question. Yeah, I mean, Dries said at the DrupalCon Barcelona last year, like AI is the new UI.
Yes.
Yeah, and so, but AI has to be integrated at many different layers, and we see how we can take advantage of that. I think it's going to be interesting to see what the future of websites is. And I know that there's a session at DrupalCon in Vienna that is called the future of web's 2035, or what it will look like in 2035. I'm excited to see that one. So yeah, I think if it can continue to keep a pace with this need for modularity, and help us evolve the architecture and be a future ready platform so that we can take the learnings from that, because we will need to apply that ourselves. That will be really valuable for us.
I guess there's a trade-off between some of the freedom that AI can deliver. So, when you're looking at tools like Replit, for example, and Lovable, where you're creating websites using prompts on the one hand, there's a trade-off between the freedom that gives. For an organization like Nestlé, you want brand consistency, don't you? You want exceptionally consistent user experiences, great accessibility, great responsive performance, and so on. So I guess finding that really strong middle ground and the ability to get the best out of both worlds is quite a challenge. But if Drupal can manage that, it would be wonderful.
Yeah, no, I mean that's a really good example of using prompts to create a website, but on the back end, it's not going to have all that security requirements, integrations.
Yes. Yeah.
That is required. There is so much underneath the hood because it has taken us 8 years to build it. So it cannot be replaced by a single prompt.
So that's a vision of the future. Antonella, it's been really, really lovely talking with you today. Thank you. I would love to invite you back on in a few months' time, and once you've been to some of those talks at DrupalCon, and let's have another conversation about some of the areas that you see Drupal developing in, because I think that would be a wonderful conversation to have.
Fantastic. Would love to. Thank you.
Marvelous. Thank you, Antonella, and have a wonderful time. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye, Julie.